So far I've talked about the scale and reach of mobiles, both globally and to each individual user. Mobiles are the pervasive computing platform. Now, we're going to start talking about the range of platform choices you have to make. I'll give some hints about how to make decisions and how to work with the now more common need for multiple platforms at once. When interactive technologies first appeared, it was as an offshoot of the traditional information distribution methods, print and advertising. Websites were not really related, and in many industries, even now in some cases, an interactive CD is the digital medium. Today, many organizations are not much better, really. They still assume something is king, with all others as offshoots. Of course, the web, by which everyone means the web for desktops and laptops, is the default. Alternative functions and platforms like mobile web and apps are offshoots. Yes, even for many people I have met who build apps only, they assume, as we talked about in part 2, the desktop is the normal computer, and web technology is the default, and the best we can do. I think that's wrong, and we need to embrace every platform, but more importantly, it's way more complex than that. Everything overlaps, and choices are not clear. Things like email and SMS that have been used for decades need to be included in strategies and plans. Later, we'll talk more about thinking systematically, but for now, let's run through the decision matrices you will likely encounter. Now, I do know we don't always have a choice. Very often we get a project as, I want an app, but you need to at least know what the true capabilities and limits of each approach are. And very often I can talk people out of their idea and help them make a better choice. The first of these choices is web or app. Often I say this is actually no choice and you need both. If you have an app, you must have a website for discovery, support, and so forth. Websites we all know about. But think of what a website means. It's got a display at the client, the computer in your hand or on your desk, in a piece of software that has to be installed and configured correctly but loads all information at the moment you ask for a remote server. We take this all for granted now, but there are a number of moving pieces there. A web app, as we can now call it, is basically just an HTML5 website with local caching enabled. That way, any user who has visited the site at least once, reasonably recently, can view and interact with a cached version. It's sort of a middle ground, but isn't much used for various reasons, so we're not going to talk about it much. Apps you're all used to, and mobile apps are not conceptually different from desktop applications. They're downloaded, installed, and they do everything locally, even if what they do is informed by content from remote servers. But how do you tell when it's time to build one, or when your product demands an app instead of a website? I have to stop and make a note about terminology here. We'll discuss some details of this later, but for now, only say app instead of mobile app. Adding native actually has a specific meaning, so make sure that your app is native before you say that. Amazon is an excellent example of offering both options. There are good reasons that some people might only be able to use one, and Amazon doesn't want to miss a sale because they prefer you use their app instead of their website. The app is faster, saves your credentials better, so you immediately get into your own personal view, can be loaded as an intent, waits in the background, and offers quicker access to every part of the Amazon experience with the menu. But the web page loads when people do internet searches, works on every mobile devices, so you can get away without a native app for Windows and BlackBerry and feature phones. Apps have better performance and access to all those neat features. If you're making a game, something with integrated photography or mapping, or complex gestures, you probably need to make an app. If you need direct networks access, like the control software for your smartwatch, you'll need an app. Apps also have local storage, so it can work offline, remember who you are, and be waiting for you in the background, or actually do jobs in the background. But, on the other hand, you have to build them for each platform, which is expensive and time-consuming. You're almost always going to need a dedicated developer for each platform, but maybe as few as one developer for each one. Platforms are different enough, there are few who are equally good at everything. Users have to find them through various app discovery schemes, which are not really part of the conventional internet search. And with install processes, they have to commit to it. Even if your app is free, they won't be able to use it to read the news or find out when sunrise is for a few minutes while they download and install it. They'll tend to keep forgetting to use it. You have to remind them that it's there and they should open it. The web is great for discovery. Just ask Google. Much of the world's information is available for discovery just by typing. Your website can be found by anyone on the internet, and if you set things up right, they'll see the mobile version on their phone or tablet. Websites are generally easy to build and can be made to work at least a little on anything from feature phones to TVs. But it requires a connection at all times, has more limited mobile-specific features, and can be a performance problem depending on what you're trying to do with it. Push notifications can be done with either one, sort of. It depends on what you want to do with them. Only apps can make things appear in the notifications area in your phone, but your server can send email and text messages. Those can have links which take the user directly to a page, or app for that matter. They're not the same, but think hard about what you need reminders to do before you hear notifications and say, well then, we have to build an app for that. We'll talk more about that in Part 7.
I also want to talk about economics for a bit. Now, this will focus on apps, just because there's something easier to measure. Web follows much of the same trends, but we've gotten used to websites being something you could offer for free to get people to pay for a service. Apps are supposed to make you money. But the numbers do not lie. 96% of app publishers do not recover the development costs of their app. The billions of revenue in the market are so concentrated at the top, as it always is. Just 20 publishers make half the app revenue in the App Store and Play Store. That doesn't mean you need to get out of apps. It just means you need to think of them like you have the web for a decade or two. It's just another endpoint to your service. I expect to see more and more free apps, which are gateways to paid or freemium services. Think strategically about your product before you start paying people to code things.
Then it gets even more complex, as you have to choose, or at least understand, how to implement each of these techniques. There's a choice, or at least options, versions, and continuums of choice for each of these categories. Also, don't forget those other platforms. What part of the user's task or your communications with them are notifications, text messaging, emails, or even things you just mail them. It should all be considered, and as much as possible, be an integrated experience, technically integrated, not just in your design. In the next segment, I'll continue discussion of choices and platform options on each app side. Do you build native or hybrid? And what's the difference in capabilities with each one?